The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. We are back with another week of podcasting excellence on the Nerdcast Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us for another week of Anime Thursdays. Although this week and for the next few Thursdays, it's going to kind of be a best of 2024 as we start to wrap up the year and get ready to look at 2025 just around the corner. So this week, we're going to be doing a couple different things. We're going to talk about some news items, as we always do. Then we're going to get to the best of 2024 in video games and kind of look at what was good and maybe, what we still need to get to. And it may not be necessarily games that came out in 2024, but things that we came across in this calendar year. And then in the end, we're going to give you a little bit of a buyer's guide, if you will, to some of the deals that are available for anime, because we got Christmas right around the corner, and you're probably going to want to get to some shopping if you're going to want to get anything by the time Christmas rolls around. So we're going to tell you, give you some guidance on what you should pick up this holiday season. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going? Oh, hold on. Let's try it again. How about now? How's it going?
Hey, can I talk now? Awesome. Yeah, it's going all right. Things are kind of hectic as we near the end of the year, trying to put a bow on kind of everything we talk about here. But yeah, excited to talk about games from this past year and some anime.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight, and Chris will be joining us in a little bit when we get around to talking about the best video games of 2024. But I'm going to get to some news items out of the gate first, and first off is just a kind of an update to a story we talked about a couple of weeks ago and just kind of confirmed what we saw a few weeks ago, that indeed Sony has confirmed that they do have intention to purchase Kadokawa, the publisher and distributor behind many popular anime and video games. And basically all they said in this release was they really can't comment beyond the fact that they are interested, and they're probably not going to hear a lot of other comments until there's some sort of decision as to whether they will or will not buy. We spent a lot of time talking about it, so I certainly encourage you to go back a few weeks to kind of hear the full conversation on it. But it is always, as we mentioned a couple weeks ago, concerning when you have consolidation in the industry. We've seen very bad examples of that recently, and I'm sure while they will spin some positives out of this, it is a little concerning that it does seem to be another step closer to potentially happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, competition is what you want. The last thing you want is for one entity to buy up everybody, and Sony's been in a buying mood for the past couple of years. In the article, they do mention some Kadokawa employees are happy about the rumors. I think mainly because they feel that their current president, Takeshi Natsuno, just hasn't handled things very well lately. They had a big cyber attack this past summer, and I think that left a lot of people looking for new leadership. That's great to feel that way, but you'd always kind of feel like any kind of positive effect you get from that will be short-lived once you ultimately have to downsize and get rid of redundant positions.
I just went through that last year in this past year with the company I worked with. Was a great place to work, and then a couple of years ago we were bought out by a bigger company, and at the time everybody spends it as great. Hey, we got a bigger company, we got more money, we're going to be able to do all these cool things that we haven't been able to do because we didn't have the resources. And initially, maybe you do see a little bit of that, but in the end, they pillaged our website and they took all the best people, moved them to their websites, and then they came back in 6 months and said, "Why is this website failing?" And of course, then they start letting people go. And between that and redundant, positions where you just either fire people, or what you do is people would decide to move on and then you just don't replace them, and you take that work and you spread it out over, two people's work being done by one person, then three people's work done by one person, and finally that person leaves because they're overworked and underpaid, and then you just have this cycle of, well, then you don't have enough people to actually do the work properly, so the site does worse, and then it's a bad situation. So again, these are Japanese companies. They're not going to conduct business in the same way that business might necessarily be conducted in the United States. So we'll have to take a wait and see attitude as to how good or bad it ends up. But again, it's just fewer companies in the market means fewer opportunities to take risks, to do things that are cool. You end up with just everybody kind of doing the safe thing or doing the same thing, and it's not a good situation if companies are kind of forced out because they just can no longer compete with these conglomerate mega companies that have all the money and all the resources.
And I think kind of to your first point too, kind of relating to your own example, is you always seem to end up in this scenario where the person who is now going to be calling the shots never really understood what made what they purchased special to begin with. Yeah. And I think for something like anime and gaming too, a lot of what draws people to both of those, as far anime for sure, and in my case, gaming is generally the Japanese side of it. It's the fact that it's so different than typically what we get over here entertainment-wise. I think if you fail to realize that and you think that you can somehow homogenize all of your offerings to suit everybody, I think you're going to lose out on what's special about everything you produce.
Yeah, that certainly has happened and could be a concern. I think anytime you get these companies becoming so big that they're trying to be everything for everybody instead of being unique or interesting or carrying any kind of traditions on. But again, like I said, the Japanese are pretty good about preserving traditions in their own work, so we'll see how this ends up playing out. Again, it's not going to play out quickly. You've already seen it took several weeks for Sony to even admit that there was an interest there. So I think you're talking maybe late 2025, early 2026 before anything would actually be finalized. But we're going to hear more and more about it, I'm sure, as the year goes on. And if it even happens, because again, there's, it's also possible they just decide it doesn't make sense to do it and they just punt on the whole thing. But at least we know that there is a little fire where there was smoke, and that's something we're going to have to kind of keep an eye on as we go into the new year. The other stories this week, certainly not maybe as doom and gloom. This one's kind of an interesting one, and I know Mike's a big fan of Hunter x Hunter, so I thought this was kind of an interesting story that premium gaming maker High Ground is collaborating with the Hunter x Hunter anime series to create PC gaming accessories. They're going to be available online and at Best Buy of all places, which is interesting. But, Best Buy has everything but physical media now, so I guess that shouldn't be too shocking. But looks like just a whole series of keyboards and mice and other gear, I guess. I'm not 100% sure everything, but it will be available exclusively at Best Buy, which is, or at least some of it will be exclusive to Best Buy, which is, again, kind of interesting that I don't see Best Buy necessarily as a place that you would get anime-related gear, so that's kind of an interesting thing. But your thoughts on it's cool to see more Hunter x Hunter merch, but this is kind of an interesting story.
Yeah, it is. I know just from my experience PC gaming that there is a market for like these boutique kind of peripherals. I've never really understood it. I also follow like the mechanical keyboard subreddit and the brands that people talk about there and just what they're willing to put in money wise to buy these things. It's never really been for me. I'm happy with my Razer mouse that has the detachable faces so I can play different types of games. It's cool that you have these kind of collaborations. Looking at High Ground's website, you have Kojima Productions, One Piece, Minecraft, Naruto, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Attack on Titan. They're all over the place. So there's certainly something to be excited about if you're into this thing. To me, it kind of feels like the computer accessory version of like G Fuel. It's like, let's see how many different collaborations we can come out with to cater to all brands of nerd. But yeah, anytime you have anything anime related coming to Best Buy, I'm all for it.
And it's, I don't know, looking at some of the keyboards you can see in the story, they certainly have gone all out with these designs. There's definitely a wide range.
They're loud.
Yeah, they are definitely loud. It feels like something you would buy if you were specifically going to stream so that people would see it. Like, you wouldn't want to just buy it and then have nobody ever look at it. Like, it's definitely got an art element to it that's really impressive. And again, I don't know how well these keyboards hold up as far as gaming. Like, I'm not a big gamer, as we're going to talk about when we get to the gaming section today, but obviously I would think for the hardcore gamers that are on their keyboard, I would think, function is going to be very important rather than maybe more so than what it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also generally not the fan of smaller form factor keyboards.
Yeah.
I prefer to have the 10 key, give me as much nonsense on it as I can use. But I know a lot of people like the lower profile stuff. Let me see if I can find where I was at here on their site, because I saw something kind of ridiculous. Let's see. Have the Hunter one on here yet? Guess not. So one of the collections they have on their site are the Naruto keyboards. You can get the Naruto HG Base 65 keyboard. Doesn't have the 10 key or whatever. It's on sale right now for $116. They have another one with Kakashi on it that's $145. So clearly these are premium peripherals for sure.
Premium prices for sure.
Yeah.
So I would hope that performance-wise.
And when I said base, that was literally like base model. It wasn't like a cool brand name. They have the Summit 65 keyboard line with like this one-piece one here with Luffy on it, $260.
Oh.
Let's see. A Zoro one for $234. So yeah, I mean these guys must be in business.
Luffy better bring that to my house for $260. Like,
yeah, that is a lot.
That is you're gonna have to find the one piece to be able to afford that kind of keyboard. But
exactly.
But again, I mean, for people that are super fans that also are fans of these keyboard and peripherals, could be a good matchup there. But be ready to open your wallet because it's not going to be cheap at all. But you may see it at your local Best Buy, so that is kind of cool. But just something different there for sure. One other news story, and this is the time of year for lists, and they do make for good content, even if the lists are bad. So let's get to one of those, and it will kind of tie us into talking about what we've got coming up the next few weeks. According to CBR.com, Google has announced the top trending search terms in its year-end search data drop, which included which anime were among the top searched in 2024. And again, something we talked about online, but it is important that top searched anime doesn't necessarily mean these are the best anime of the year, only that people were going and searching for this. And I think it's going to be pretty clear why when we get to the list. But the top 10 anime in the search list are Marshall's number 1, Don Da Don, Kaiju number 8, My Dear Friend Nokotan, The Elusive Samurai, Demon Slayer, Hashira Training Arc, Blue Box, Dragon Ball Daima, Oblivion Battery, and Delicious in Dungeon rounds out the top 10. Your immediate first thought was there are some questionable opening themes on some of these shows, and regardless of what I think of them, they are certainly among the most pervasive opening themes of the year, and I have to assume that's at least part of the reason these shows were at the top of the list.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't know how many people were necessarily talking about Marshall until that second open hit. Like, to me, it looked like it was probably a pretty decent shonen title, nothing
special, really.
Yeah, I mean, main character, I think, doesn't use magic, so kind of has that Black Clover thing going on. I kind of wanted to watch it, but then once that Creepy Nut song dropped, that is... A lot of people really like it.
Yeah, I mean, we saw lists where that was the number one open of the year.
I think the first open's a lot better, personally.
Yeah.
Similar with Don Da Don. Another Creepy Nut song that isn't as good as their Call of the Night open.
No.
Kaiju number 8, great show. Evidently Youngblood must be a bigger deal than I realized.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with him, but I was watching a video... I want to say it was PMT UK, which is a guitar-centered YouTube channel, and they were talking about like the top kind of budget guitars for the year. And one of them was actually a Youngblood signature Epiphone, I think it was.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so I mean, this guy is important enough to have a line of signature guitars, so I get that. Otherwise, Dragon Ball Daima, the open didn't really floor me on that one. Blue Box has Official Hige Dandism, I think, does the open for that.
That's a big one.
Oblivion Battery is a baseball show, so that's cool.
Good to see people looking at baseball.
Yeah, and that's really all I can pull from this.
I mean, Demon Slayer is Demon Slayer.
Yeah.
That show's wildly
That's
popular.
a huge show.
So I get that. And Dragon Ball Daima, again, with everything that happened and Toriyama's passing, that was almost to be expected.
And also, going back to Don to Don, I know that show has a crazy amount of hype on it, with or without the opening. So it's not just that the open is notable, but everyone's talking about that being just a huge show this season.
Yeah, I think Marshall and Nokotan are clearly up there because of the meme song. I think Don to Don and Kaiju number 8, I think, are probably there because they're big, popular shows that also maybe have songs that have pulled them up farther in the rankings.
To me, Kaiju number 8 screams something that should be on Toonami.
Yeah.
I think it would fit just perfectly. It would appeal to, I think, Western anime fans probably more than some of these other shows on the list. Really excited to see more of it, to be honest.
And that Bling Bong Bong Boom song was the number 1 trending song, so that explains that as well. But also a couple movies that weren't listed here. Haikyuu, The Dumpster Battle, and Mobile Suit Gundam Seed Freedom was also trending. I don't know about The Dumpster Battle, but it is good to see more of the Mobile Suit Gundam Seed franchise trending. That's something I want to try to track down if possible and watch. Definitely on the list of things that I think will be interesting. But the reason really want to bring this up is in a couple of weeks on our Thursday edition, we'll get to our Best of Anime 2024. We'll talk about the best shows that we watch, and Mike has watched a ton, so he's going to be able to really give you a good idea of what's out there. And we'll talk about some of the best theme songs from 2024 as well. I don't know if you'll have your 2024 video by then.
I might.
If
it's
so,
certainly possible.
If possible.
I still need to upload my top openings of shows I watched this year.
Yeah.
I have that finished. I just have to upload it. But, then I'll move right on to the top opens for 24,
so it's possible in a couple of weeks if we do have that available, we'll watch that on the program as well to kind of get an idea of the best music from 2024. So that'll be coming up in 2 weeks. Next Thursday night, we're going to be talking Best of Wrestling 2024. Of course, WWE has Saturday night's main event coming up this Saturday. So really, that's kind of the last big wrestling event for 2024. So it really kind of felt like a good time to get into the best of the year. Not to say there couldn't be some things happen over the holidays, but really a lot of these shows are going to be taped over the next few weeks. And everybody building up to the first edition on Netflix in the beginning of January and New Year's Evil coming up. So a lot of big stuff in early January. So next
you're assuming that Tony Khan won't add more time to the end of 2024. We might still have some injury time left, and it'll still be 2024 well into July.
I mean, Ray Phoenix is certainly probably going to have to be in 2024.
Poor guy can't even find a doctor.
Yeah, as it turns out. What a mess situation that is for sure. But I'm sure everybody will run to Tony's defense on that as they always do. But we won't be talking about AEW. If you're an AEW fan, there's plenty of media outlets out there that cover AEW extensively, both the good and the bad. We'll let all those people kind of take that. We're going to stick to...
They're the experts.
Yeah, either side, honestly. So we'll let them take that. We'll stick to WWE and NXT, and we'll be talking about that coming up next week. Our Best of Wrestling 2024. I think it'll be it's been a good year in wrestling.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really good stuff, I think, coming in early 2025 in WWE and NXT. So, I think that'll be a fun show. That'll be next Thursday. Of course, coming up Sunday, we got another episode of Music Weekly, the music of November the 29th, I believe we've got this week. It's our last week of November.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a best of for music, but it won't be until we get to January. We're going to wait till we get through all the weeks of December on our regular shows so that we basically have the whole year. And then we'll go back and do a best of music of 2024. So that'll be coming up later in January or maybe early February. So stick around for that. But that won't be in our regular run of shows here just because we want to make sure we get all of 2024 in there. So, and since we review it every week, there's no sense in doing it early. But that kind of covers our news items for this week. And we've got a lot of stuff to go over coming up. And I believe I see Chris is in the channel. I don't know if he can hear me or not, or we can hear him.
Yes, I can.
Here we go. And he's coming through on the right channel on the board. Chris, how's it going?
It's going all right. It's been a while. It's a lot colder since the last time I joined in, and but I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you here. It's good stuff. We're going to be talking gaming is the best of gaming 2024 on this episode, and obviously 2024 another big year in gaming, and as is typically the case, Chris and Mike are our big gamers in this podcast. I did game more this year than I have probably the last few years combined. If you take out Heroes of Might and Magic 3, which I did continue to play in 2024, but we'll get to what I did in 2024 in a little bit. So basically what we're going to be talking about is the best games everybody played during the year. Now, they could be games that came out in 2024. They could also be older games that maybe they just got around to in 2024, pick back up for the first time in a while. Games from this year that maybe you saw came out and you want to play soon. And then for those of us who had a chance to go to a gaming convention, we'll talk about our conventions of the year, but I think Mike and I are probably on the same page on that one. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But we haven't had a chance to talk with Chris, so we're going to let him go first on the first question. We do see you streaming, and of course, this is a good time for me to plug our Discord, so I will post that in the chat. You will get notifications when we stream not only on Nerdcast Empire, but on our individual Twitch channels. And I've seen you, Chris, play a lot of different games in 2024, so I guess we'll let you go first. What are some of the best games you played this year?
Yeah, it's been kind of a wild year, random as always, as far as what I'm actually able to play and make time for. And what keeps my attention nowadays is I have a lack of an attention span raising two twins who have hit their terrible twos way too soon. But yeah, a lot of the games I have listed here in my notes that I managed to play this year actually were from 2024. I'd say top of the list would be NCAA 25 or EA's college football. It's finally back, albeit with EA, but it's kind of one of those situations where it's been so long since we've had a game, you kind of got to take what you're given. And it's got its pros, it's got its cons. I know in past episodes I've talked about how I recommend nobody give them money as far as paying into their ultimate team kind of pyramid scheme that they have going on with Madden and now NCAA as well. But admittedly, I have once again jumped into Ultimate Team, gotten hooked, haven't spent any money, but it's taken up far too much of my time, and I'm sure my wife is sick of it as well. Great Dynasty mode. It's about as buggy as you would expect an EA game to be, and I wish their support team was a little bit better, but by far the game I've played the most. It's been great getting to play with friends and college football and going back and reliving some of the moments we missed when there wasn't a college football game. Another returning series, we got Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. I can't tell. I mean, I've been waiting for this since Budokai Tenkaichi 3 released. I remember playing the Tenkaichi games growing up with my friends as kids and just taking turns playing through the story mode, trying to overtake Kid Buu in one of the final episodes, and it just being absolutely just a destructive moment. And it's bringing back a lot of those memories. There's ranked play that I haven't really gotten into. I guess I feel like it'll kind of ruin the experience for me because I am not that great. But story mode is everything I could have wanted. Get to play through a lot of the iconic character storylines, and there's a lot of what ifs. I get to play as my boy Frieza, and I get to see what happens if he won a lot of his battles. And I mean, they're just little quick quips about him becoming the emperor a little earlier, but it's a lot of fun. I highly recommend it to any fan of Dragon Ball, but if you're a fan of Dragon Ball, you're already probably playing it. Some smaller games that I haven't spent as much time with, but I got to play a little bit of. Some games that were kind of already out but dropped on other consoles. Goat Simulator 3, I got to install that. That dropped on Game Pass a little earlier this year and had some fun with that. It's just a fun little game to kill some time for a little bit. Some smaller games like Little Kitty Big City. Found that on the list of games for 2024, and I do recall downloading and playing that. Just one of those games that you can play with the family or that they might actually enjoy a little bit more than watching me play college football. Recently started playing some Mud Runner with some folks. They've released a couple DLCs this year and some expansions that kind of change the setting of where you're pulling your trucks around. Yakuza Kiwami dropped on a Nintendo Switch. Absolutely love the Yakuza series, so it's great that more folks are going to be able to finally get into the series on the Nintendo Switch. Call of Duty Black Ops 6, obviously one of, if not the biggest titles dropping in 2024. And while I haven't dug too much into the regular multiplayer, really trying not to get myself hooked, even I have to admit, as a guy who's been against COD for many years now, that it's turned around with this one, and I'm enjoying the game modes that I have been able to jump into, be it zombies, prop hunt, or other multiplayer or campaign. And then I've touched a little bit on Stalker 2 and the original Fallout 1. Both of those kind of given me my post-apocalyptic fix. Went back to play the original Fallout because we've had a decent amount of movie and series adaptations for video games this year. We've had the Fallout series, which was very successful, of course. Here after the next week, we're going to have 2 Sonic movies in the same year. Borderlands, I won't touch on that at all for obvious reasons. We've got the Arc animated series, and apparently speaking of Yakuza again, there was a Like a Dragon Yakuza TV series that dropped earlier this year that I was totally unaware of. I'm going to have to check it out. Looks like an all foreign cast, so maybe it's kind of limited on where it's being streamed, but 67% on Rotten Tomatoes and about a 5.6 on IMDb. So, I mean, I've seen worse. And kind of capping this off, just because I don't know whether to mark this as a game I want to play, because I did install it today. It's Marvel Rivals. From what I've been told, it's kind of a hot topic right now. A lot of my coworkers are wanting me to get into it. It's essentially Overwatch, but with Marvel characters, and you kind of got to think that with Marvel licenses, it's something that could easily blow up. And from what I'm hearing about most, if not all, the content being free to play, it's free to download. It's kind of what you're looking for in a live service game nowadays, with us trying to get away from these games that are being driven by DLC and all these. I mean, NCAA 25, for instance, these pack openings that are in these EA games and these other DLCs. So kind of a breath of fresh air. I'm looking forward to finally playing it now that it's downloaded, and I'll have to report back on how it is.
Yeah, definitely curious to hear about that. And I'll let Mike kind of chime in on his thoughts on your list, but I'll go ahead and get mine out of the way first, since I've only really played one new game this year, but finally broke down and bought a PS5 and got the college football game, which I've been playing pretty regularly for the last couple of weeks. Doing the dynasty mode with the coach, taking UC to already won national championship. I don't do any of the add-ons. I'm just here to play the college football, so haven't really had any issues with it. The only thing for me is because it had been so long since I had played any football game on, because I haven't had a system in a couple of systems. It's just taking some time to get back into being good at it, which I think I finally, I couldn't quite make the varsity level at first. I was losing games, and I wasn't quite ready to play that yet. But now, kind of going down to the easy level, I feel like I'm getting the controls back and kind of figuring it out. So it's been a lot of fun, but eventually I'll have to step back up. But yeah, it's cool to see a college football game again. And I would say overall, they did a pretty good job with it, with the normal bugs that you would expect. Mike, before we get to your list, any thoughts on anything Chris said?
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about Marvel Rivals as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think for that type of market that game is entering into, when you have an IP like Marvel, you're that's all you need. Like, it's so difficult to come up with your own intellectual property and enter into the market when there are games like Overwatch that have been the king for years. Like, how do you break into that? And even this case with Marvel, if you start out with a free-to-play model, you're going to kill with Steam numbers, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing now. And eventually, I'm sure they'll introduce more of a monetization plan for it, and it'll probably work really well as long as the gameplay holds up.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as long as the game is good, people are willing to pay extra for it. I mean, not everybody, but I think, you certainly have people out there that don't mind that so much.
And also, kind of to the point about not wanting to pay for EA games, which I totally understand. I think you can get College Football 25 at most retailers right now for about $35.
Yeah.
It seems to be one of those like just regularly discounted games for the holiday season. So, it's not 70 at the very least.
Yeah, and I think I got it for 25 because I had bought the PS5 in addition, so I kind of got that bundle on Black Friday, which made it even a better deal. Had I realized that was the bundle, I would have probably went ahead and picked up the new hockey game also, but it is what it is. We'll get that somewhere down the line. I'm busy enough with the college football game that I don't think I necessarily need another game to play right now. But But yeah, I mean, it's EA. You know, at me, all these new games are going to be high, but that's what I get the Switch for. I can always buy more affordable games that are fun over there. If I don't have to necessarily stock up on PS5 games. I've got the Switch and maybe soon the Switch 2, but we'll talk about that in 2025. Let's get to your games, Mike. I know, as always, you have a lot of games on your slate for 2024. What really stood out to you?
Yeah, it's funny. I saw that PlayStation had their kind of yearly wrap-up thing that they give you, and I was looking at it earlier, and it's no different than like the music services doing that. Like, it never gives you a full picture, obviously, because they don't know what PC games you played or what Switch games you played.
Right.
Just as when Spotify tells me what my Wrapped looks like, and it's like, no, I can guarantee you my most popular band all year wasn't some random band that I picked in May for our music episode. Like, yeah, maybe I listened to that for 2 hours, but that wasn't, that wasn't the top. But
Right.
yeah, like looking at my PlayStation Wrapped, it was just like I went months not even touching it. Like, I would have these droughts where it's like, you played this game once, it's your game of the month. Like, awesome. That being said, kind of starting out earlier in the year, a game that I still need to play more, but even with what limited time I've played it, I think it definitely makes one of the year's best. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And that's coming from somebody who, in my teenage years playing the original Final Fantasy VII, I liked it, but I don't think I hold it in as high a regard as some people do. To me, 4 and 6 are still my favorites. But yeah, I mean, game was released at the end of February. Part 2 of what is the entire Final Fantasy VII remake, as it were. This one's great pretty much right off the bat because you're not in Midgar anymore. You actually can explore the world. You have more of the party that are playable. It's almost too ambitious, where I'll play it and it's almost like playing an MMO where you're just like, what do I do? Like, I have all this in front of me. Where do I go next? And the other issue I have is that, I was working on getting through all the Pixel Remaster games, and I'm still on 6. I haven't jumped back into it in a while, but I still plan on it. So then I think, like, I have that same kind of thought of, should I play these sequentially, even though they're not, 6 isn't related to 7, but it's like, I never finished Final Fantasy VII Remake. Should I go back and do that before I get into Rebirth? Then I think, man, it's been a while since I went through the original 7. Should I go back through it again, just so it's more fresh in my mind going into Remake and Rebirth? So I'll eventually figure all that out and what order I want to knock these out in. But when I get back around to Rebirth, it's phenomenal. Moving on to another game that's celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. And I had to mention it just because I feel like they're really doing their best to kind of stay relevant in a world where no games last that long. And that's World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
They had their most recent expansion, The War Within, released in August. It's 20 years old. The game originally came out in November 2004. It's funny because I feel like this year specifically, they did so much to kind of show that they're not just going to they're not going to rest on their laurels and just, hey, we have a game, people pay for it, whatever. They a few years back, they unleashed a classic version of the game, which takes it all the way back to the original release, all the pain involved with it, lack of quality of life features, all that fun stuff. But and this year, they actually came out with a version of Classic called Season of Discovery that actually adds new content to Classic. A lot of different new skills your characters can learn, new raids and dungeons kind of tailored for how they phased the different level caps. Basically, you started out level cap of 25, then 40. I think now they're up to 60. I've kind of dropped off of it, but they're planning, as far as I know, potentially they're going to be doing like a Classic Plus on top of that, where they'll actually come up with whole new content separate from the original set of expansions. So I think that's, for a lot of people, that's the version of the game they want. So that's really cool. Moving on, kind of to give a different segment of players something to play, they came out with a new PvP mode for a limited time called Plunderstorm, which was basically like a battle royale type game where you had limited skills that dropped randomly off of things you would kill, and basically it was just one giant battle royale in an arena that would slowly constrict, bringing everybody together. A lot of cool things you could buy with the currency from that mode. Then the other thing that they did that I thought was actually pretty cool was they revisited their 4th expansion, Mists of Pandaria, and did a Mists of Pandaria remix where basically you went through that expansion like it was brand new with a brand new character, but they made your character kind of comically powerful where you had crazy stats on a cloak that would level up with you. You could get skills to equip that weren't even of your class to make you even more powerful. And like with everything else, tons of unlockables, mounts, transmog, everything you could possibly want to make you feel like your time's being put to good use. But yeah, I'm amazed. And now you have this situation where they've been bought out by Microsoft, Activision Blizzard has, and as a result, you're seeing weird things like that collaboration they did with the University of Washington, their football team, which was really bizarre. A collab with Mountain Dew with a lot of in-game rewards that you can get through getting points from their drinks. I enjoy massively multiplayer games, both as a player and just the business side of it. Just watching how they struggle to or manage to both attract new players and keep the existing ones, because those people aren't really easy to please. And the second you give them any kind of quality of life improvement and make the game less hard, they get angry. So it's just kind of fascinating to watch how it all plays out. And I really wonder what the future holds for them, both with this game and whatever they do with the IP moving forward.
Yeah, they've certainly made the most of this game for 20 years. And, I think of it in the same way that I think of Heroes of Might and Magic, because I played the base game of that for so long, then I gave it up and came back, and it's still there. And now you have these mods that people have done that have added new content, new random maps, new campaigns that basically have taken a game that hasn't changed for the most part in the game mechanics since it came out in the 90s, and it's still a lot of fun to play. And I think this is a case where you've taken something that could be dated, people could have easily moved on and not come back, but they found a way to not only keep it relevant, but kind of make people excited about what could still happen. And I think anything that's that old that people want to keep revisiting and finding new challenges and new fun in, I think you figured it out, because not only now talking about a game that's been around 20 years, you're not just talking about keeping players involved, but now a lot of these players might have kids that, maybe they're going to get involved. And now you've got a whole new audience of fans that you can basically make content for. And once you've done that, you're golden. You're going to be making money forever.
It's really interesting, too, looking at it from like the historical perspective, comparing it to other games in that same subgenre of RPG that maybe didn't make the same correct decisions. I think to a game like EverQuest, which was really huge for a while and predates WoW, but you felt like just some of the technological decisions and graphical decisions they went with really kind of led it to age super poorly. Whereas if you play classic WoW, yeah, you're going to think, man, this isn't the prettiest game by any means, but it's not painful to look at. And I think that's a big part of their success too, is that they found this style that is cartoony enough where it feels like that was a choice and not any kind of technological limitation. They never went with the realistic graphics, which I think was brilliant.
It's the Nintendo model that basically we could make this look so amazingly incredible, but what do you want? Do you want it to be the real-to-life graphics, or do you want it to be fun and something you're going to come back to and play? And maybe graphics are still going to be good, but we're going to back off a little bit. And clearly that model's worked very well for Nintendo.
Yeah, and speaking of Nintendo, another game on my list from this year came out back in July. It was the Nintendo World Championships NES Edition.
Yeah.
Really cool speed running mashup of a lot of the old first-party Nintendo games where they have them broken down into little time trials of different parts of the games. The games included are games like Balloon Fight, Donkey Kong, Excite Bike, Ice Climber, Kid Icarus, Kirby's Adventure, Metroid, Super Mario 1, 2, and 3, and the Lost Levels, and Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2. So, as you go, you do the time trials. If you score highly enough, you earn currency, essentially, to unlock the next trials through the game. But, yeah, I've never really been a speedrunner. That's not really my thing, but it's kind of wild how enjoyable it is over and over again fighting like the second palace boss from Zelda 2 just to try to shave tenths of seconds off of your time. And I got a lot of play out of this. I would love to see them add some third-party titles. I think something like the Mega Man series would be perfect for a game like this. But yeah, again, obviously not graphically impressive, but really fun and definitely takes me back to my childhood.
It's another opportunity to do something that streamers do all the time, which is the speed runs. And hey, let's make a whole game out of this, and we'll basically give you the mechanics to do it and let you stream it. And again, sometimes the easy answer for content is the one that makes the most sense. And this was one that just made way too much sense not to do it. And watching you play it is something you could spend a lot of hours on without even realizing it, and just to, like you said, get a little bit higher rank because I need to get 3/10 faster so I can get the S rank or whatever. Like, you almost become obsessed with it, and that's what you want in a game that's otherwise pretty simple.
And it's funny too, having played these games when I was so young, you don't even think about how the games work themselves and kind of weird exploits that you can take advantage of, like in Zelda 2. If Link uses his sword, you can basically take the D-pad and like kind of do like a back and forth motion, and it'll basically hit multiple times because he'll face away and then face toward the opponent and away and toward, and each one could register as a hit. Like stuff like that I never would have thought of when I was a kid, but again, these kind of games kind of put you in that mindset.
Yeah, you're looking for every shortcut and edge, and now that you're older and you think about that kind of stuff, there's a lot of new stuff out there for sure.
Yeah. Kind of moving on to what I think might be my game of the year. Not surprising that it's a remake. I tend to play a lot of those. I'm not a huge fan of the HD 2D graphical style. I think it's fine, but I think people kind of hype it more than it deserves. It's pretty, but again, they don't have the limitations of what sprite-based graphics had on the Super Nintendo.
There's a reason it looked that way back then, because that's all they could do.
Yeah, they had to cut corners. They could only use so many assets, and now you have unlimited file sizes. You can make stuff look old, but you can also make it look really pretty because there's no ceiling there. That being said, I was a little worried. I had pre-ordered this game when they first announced it, and then as we got closer to the release date, you started hearing some talk about there being some kind of weird stuff as far as the male and female selection for the characters. Akira Toriyama's character designs being censored to try to achieve a lower rating for the game, but it turned out it wasn't that big of a deal. The game still played really, really awesome, and there is still certain armor that only female characters can equip, even though you can't pick a character as female anymore, whatever that means. But that being said, I think my favorite game this year had to be Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake.
I heard nothing but good things about the gameplay of it. Yeah, I mean, there was some talk beforehand, but I think when it comes down to it, you're going to get judged by what it's like once you boot it up and get the gameplay started. And like I said, I heard a lot of really positive reviews of how it ended up turning out.
Yeah, it's everything I would want from a Dragon Quest game. It kind of makes me wonder now what's next for them, because obviously they have 1 and 2 coming out, which I think are just going to be a single individual game as Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake. I want to think this will open the floodgates to them potentially giving us home console remakes that aren't on a handheld of some of the older games as well. I mean, you have 4 through 8 that are all available on the DS or 3DS at this point. One I would like to see them remake more than anything is Dragon Quest 9.
Yeah.
Because that was a weird one to me. Dragon Quest 8, I believe that was the first one that was released under the Square Enix banner when Enix and Square merged, but it came out on the PS2 and was really kind of the first big commercial Dragon Quest game. I mean, I think it was the first game that they actually marketed as Dragon Quest over here first off.
Yeah.
But it was a big deal at the time, and made you really excited for what was going to come out with Dragon Quest 9, and next thing you know, they announced that Dragon Quest 9 was going to be exclusive to the DS. So all you have is this just kind of lackluster handheld version of this game that was supposed to be bigger in scope and size than 8 on the PS2, and it just never really felt that way. So I'd love to see them kind of breathe new life into that. I still am really wanting to see a Dragon Quest X that's playable over here.
Yeah.
Even if they come up with an offline mode, which I think they might have one of those, that would be great, because clearly you can create a Dragon Quest game that's compelling, like they did with 3 HD2D remake, and I got to assume that's the budget for that was considerably smaller than like a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
For sure.
Yeah, what can I say? I'm in the post game of this one. It's one that I plan on getting back to pretty soon, and just a really great game.
Yeah, definitely. People need to check that out if you're a fan of the Dragon Quest franchise, or even just general RPGs. If you're a JRPG fan, maybe haven't gotten into Dragon Quest, this is probably a good spot to jump in for something that's new but feels old.
It is kind of funny. I saw some critics kind of complain after the fact about some of the features of the game, which is funny because these are things to me that make it Dragon Quest. People didn't like that you couldn't adjust the frequency of random battles. Like, because in some of the remakes, I think the Pixel Remaster is one of them, you can turn off random battles.
Oh.
Which is neat and all. I think I've used it a couple times when I've backtracked places. But I wouldn't be upset if that wasn't an option. It's part of the game.
I wouldn't expect it to be an option.
The other one is, there is an autosave feature which will save periodically at like different times when you load into a new area or after a battle. But people were upset that you couldn't just save anywhere. But to me, that's not Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest is you go to the church to save. That's just how the game works.
Right.
It's just that's the world you're in. So it was kind of funny that all these people that otherwise wanted to love this game couldn't get past some of those quintessentially Dragon Quest things.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. But, sometimes I feel like that people just like to complain. Like, we have nothing else to complain about this game, so we're going to pick two things that aren't typical game mechanics for the game and say you should add that instead. But yeah, that sounds interesting. I think a lot of people have already been very high on that, and I think people will continue to say good things about that. And the one you mentioned, the Dragon Quest 1 and 2, that was one thing I forgot to put on my list, but that is definitely on my list as someone who played those games many, many moons ago. Definitely would like to play the remakes of those, so I'm really excited for those. But if Chris is still with us, I know he was there. He is. He's still there. We'll go ahead and let Chris jump in for the games that he would like to play, or maybe ones that he'd already mentioned one, but what other games from 2024 or other games in general that you haven't had a chance to play yet are on your list to play?
Yeah, so one I'll mention just offhand because I had it way too far down on my notes, and it's a re-release essentially. I have played it, but one that I'm definitely happy and want to is the re-release of Phasmophobia. Now it is on console, so I've downloaded that onto my Xbox, and I've been playing that with some friends. And it's one of those games where, with it having been just like ported over to the console from PC, I wouldn't expect a lot of playability or for it to even be at the same version as PC. But this small group of folks that have created this game do an amazing job keeping it updated, and just love ghost hunting with my friends. Getting into some other titles that I still need to play. I know I've mentioned before on previous episodes the Outlast Trials. I think I mentioned before it released that I was interested in it, and I still am. As much as I've talked about getting to play games more with my friends recently, that's one that I don't know that the group I've been playing with now are really into, but it's definitely up my alley. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. That is it's one of those multiplayer horror games that was on my radar as soon as it was announced, and after a while, even well after its release, I just kind of forgot about it. This is kind of from the same, I can't remember if it's Gun or Ilphonic, but it's this group where I know them from the Friday the 13th series, and then I did get to play Texas Chainsaw Massacre a little bit, but kind of the same vein, this survivors versus the main cast of Killer Clowns from Outer Space. So it's still up my alley. I'll be interested to kind of look into it to see how alive the game still is, as I really feel like I haven't heard that much about it since release. WWE 2K24, the WWE series as a whole is back on my radar now that we're well in over a year of doing this podcast. I grew up on the WWE games. I mean, I had every game from SmackDown Shut Your Mouth all the way up through the SmackDown versus Raw series and some of the early WWE 2K titles. Eventually, I fell off both from a mix of the quality of the 2K games kind of dropped to the point where there was even a year at least where they didn't release a game. And then I also just found myself getting out of wrestling. So a lot of the characters that were in these games or that were featured, I didn't know who they were, so I didn't have this connection. But now that I'm back and wrestling, especially in WWE, is as high a quality that it has ever been, I'm finally invested again. So I'd love to be able to get back into these games. It was always a kind of a fun sandbox for me when I compared it to the other sports games that I played. Um, Inscription, that is another re-release that's been brought over, ported from PC over to Xbox, and I did beat it, not 100%, but I beat the story mode on PC. But this is one I definitely recommend folks get into, and it's so good that I would be willing to get it again on Xbox and play through it again. It's kind of at its core, it's a card battle game similar to Slay the Spire, Dicey Dungeons, or Darkest Dungeon, created by Daniel Mullins, but it's a game that subverts expectations. It's not just a card battle game. He does an amazing job of weaving in this kind of found footage, real life story to where you're kind of supposed to almost feel like it's an ARG kind of deal where you're following this guy who's been kidnapped, sucked into this card game with this guy trying to go around this cabin and find his way out. At a certain point in the game turns into completely pulls a 180 and flips to a top-down RPG. There's just so many different mechanics wrapped into one game, and it has such a cohesive story that it's just a blast to play and get through. And the last one that I have listed here is I brought it up talking about Inscription, but Darkest Dungeon 2. Didn't necessarily come out this year, but that is one that is on Xbox. I did get the chance to play the original Darkest Dungeon when it was ported to Xbox and hit Game Pass, and really enjoy it. Just one of those kind of, if you really hate yourself and you want to dig into an excessively difficult game, kind of a mix of card battling and crawling through dungeons. It's right up your alley. It's almost like a Dark Souls-ish. I hate to use that term, but a Dark Souls-ish card game. So that's my list of games that I want to play, and I'm excited for other people to check out as well.
Yeah, some good stuff on there. Mike, any thoughts on some of those?
Yeah, I've dropped off on WWE as well in the past couple of years. I think I even bought maybe 2K23 and then never really played it. But yeah, it's always one that I think about every time a new one comes out. Like, oh, I need to get that. I need to. But ultimately, what I end up doing is I'll create a wrestler and then just slowly not play it anymore. I do miss the times when you could actually, and I think this was on 360 maybe, when you could actually import your own music and give your wrestler like your own entrance theme. Like, to me, how could that feature go away? That was too brilliant.
I have to assume there was some rights issue there where they were like, hey, you're putting licensed music in these video games, and somehow, they're not making the 6 cents off of it that they would have got for streaming it, so that's a problem. But
yeah, because you could also input that music into college football back when it's still around during the 360 days. You could have it piped in through the stadium, or the NHL games. You could have it in your rink. It would play when your players were coming out.
And that's genius.
I just listen to Machine Head over and over again.
I believe me and my brother would make we always made a tag team, and we utilized that Xbox 360 hard drive upload. And he would come out to Linkin Park's Paper Cut. I would come out to Jay-Z's Big Pimpin'. And then our tag team was the mashup of the two.
I love that it's the mashup. It's not even a different song. Like, it was exactly what WWE would have done. Like, we're just going to cram these together into one song.
See, for me, it was all about having the MP3s of like the old 80s WWE entrance music and just applying those that weren't in the game for that year.
Look, it's the Orient Express.
Like, I want my guy to come out to Brutus the Barber Beefcakes music. Why not?
Yeah, that is a feature I kind of wish was in the new college football game and in the WWE
or Slick's
game.
music. Slick's music was always a classic.
Slick's music was classic.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great themes back when they didn't all sound the same, like the current.
They had personality back then.
They
I
sure
think that's
did,
the difference.
for sure.
Not the cult of personality.
No.
No, they have that now, but it's funny because I just saw him filming something for presumably what is going to be the trailer for 2K25. I guess he was at some shoot today, I think. In fact, they had a bunch of wrestlers there, I guess. So I get the feeling we'll be seeing a trailer for that maybe soon. Maybe it'll be on the first episode on Netflix or possibly even around Super Bowl time, but and it might be the opportunity to pick up the next
get the collector's edition and get playable versions of the members of Living Color.
Yes. Oh, that's.
I'm gonna have to be careful if we start getting into the new games because I believe they also have kind of their own card collecting.
Of
like
course.
you can collect these.
Of course.
Yeah. Like if you want to get the big Papa Pump Tire, you got to spend some cash and open these packs.
Yeah, like I said with the college football game, I've avoided anything like that. I could see where you could get into that, but I'm like, I'm just gonna play the game, and I don't want to go bankrupt playing this college football game. But yeah, good stuff there for sure. We'll get to my list because it's pretty short. I mentioned the Dragon Quest 1 and 2. Those are definitely two I want to check out when they come out. I would like to pick up the new NHL game. Mike's got some older ones, and older by I mean they're still pretty recent.
22 maybe?
Yeah.
23?
So that might be a good one to jump into because it probably hasn't changed much. I have not played an EA Sports FIFA game in a long time now. It's FC, so FC 25. I wouldn't mind picking up. And then the new Super Mario Party game. I think a lot of people have been streaming the new Mario Party. Those games are always
classic,
a good time, and maybe something we can stream. But that would be one on the Switch. And obviously, whatever happens with the Switch 2 and whatever is going to come of that, I think we know generally it's coming down the pipeline sometime in 2025, what that's going to look like, what new games they're going to have set to come out when that is released. I think that's something we're all going to have to keep an eye on, but could be really interesting. I'm sure your list is more extensive and more interesting than mine. So mine are very
subjective.
Well, I have a pretty boring list, but again, I'm just really kind of getting into the console gaming for the first time in 15 years, probably. It's been a long time. And I'll probably keep playing Heroes of Might and Magic 3 because that is a great time killer when you're working on something else. Just throw that up and I can listen to music for the podcast and play Heroes of Might and Magic 3 at the same time. But
see, that's kind of what WoW is for me, when I can kind of multitask and log into a character, do a daily quest, maybe fish for a while or mine ore or something. Just something totally low effort, but it's there for me.
Yeah, for sure. What do you got on your list for stuff coming that you would like to get your hands on?
Yeah, so for my list, I did include a few 2024 games. I haven't really looked ahead much to 2025. I have such a ridiculous backlog. I kind of want to just boycott 2025 and just leave that for some other time and focus solely on games I currently have but haven't touched. That being said, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is definitely one. I got to play it a little bit, but not nearly enough. Unlike Chris, I was not a kid when I played the originals. I was very much an old man still at that point in time, but Tenkaichi 3 was tremendous. I mean, even the pre-Tenkaichi games were great. I shouldn't be able to enjoy going through the Dragon Ball story that many times over and over again, but
Strange.
It's always fun. I don't know what it is, but I definitely need to devote some time to that, and maybe that'll get me prepared for the Hunter x Hunter game when it finally comes out. That'll be cool too. Another one a long running series that I've always been a fan of, Ease 10 Nordics came out this past year. They've just been quietly releasing really cool action RPGs for years that I think just have perpetually been under the radar. Always have really good music to them as well. I've been a fan ever since Ease 3 on Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis back in the day, which is funny because that's kind of looked at as one of the worst games of the series because they went so far into left field as far as like how the game played. It was no longer a top-down game. It was 2D side-scrolling, but it didn't have the stupid bump mechanics that the first two games had, so I'm all for that, and the music in that one also helped me fall in love with the series as well. But that's one I definitely have to get around to. And there is one that actually just came out this past week that I need to get a hold of. The game is Fantasian Neo Dimension. The original Fantasian was released for the Apple Arcade back in 2021. They've released an upgraded version of it on current consoles. Big thing about it is it was made by Mistwalker and Hironobu Sakaguchi. According to the Wikipedia page, he started developing the game after he went and replayed Final Fantasy VI.
Oh.
He decided he wanted to get back into kind of creating these emotional RPG narratives again, and that's what led him to this. Nobuo Uematsu is the composer on the game, so you pretty much have your Final Fantasy Dream Team right there. And they kind of went into this game in development thinking this was probably going to be one of the last large-scale projects they'd both work on, given they're getting up there in age and health's always an issue. But now that I know that it's actually available on real consoles and not just Apple Arcade, I definitely want to give it a shot next year as well.
Yeah, that should be really, really interesting. I'm not sure why they went with Apple Arcade the first time, but
I kind of think there was some money involved there. Like we need to sell our gaming service. Like let's get essentially the father of Final Fantasy to work on it.
Like, is it too much to ask that in 2025 we can just make everything you can play on a PC playable on an Apple computer? Like I can do work on all my productivity work. I can do either or. I can move files back and forth. It's not 20 years ago where you had to work only on one or the other. Like,
now that being said, I don't know how the Apple Arcade system itself. Like, I assume it was just a gaming service that you subscribe to. So I don't know if you could use it on anything. I really have no clue.
But I can't. There are games that are available on Steam and GOG that I cannot download onto my Mac that I can play on my PC. Let's get this figured out in 2025. I don't think that's too... I should be able to play Heroes of Might and Magic 3 on my Mac. There's no question. It's heavy duty enough to run it. Let's figure this out. So that's just a minor complaint. But yeah, so a lot of good stuff coming up. Anything else on your list, or was that...
That was it. But again, it's early, and I could go through and list my backlog, but that would take a really long time. One thing I have been wanting to do, and it's kind of through watching videos about the Legend of Zelda timeline, is I kind of want to go through all the Zelda games.
Yeah, that actually would be a lot of fun.
I did pull up Skyward Sword on the Switch the other day and started it because apparently it's technically the first game in the timeline, despite originally being out on the Wii. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes, but that's something I'd like to give a shot to as well.
Yeah, it sounds interesting.
Funny that you bring that up, because I'm kind of in the same boat as far as when you're playing your Final Fantasy VII remakes and all that. I'm kind of in the same boat as you, as trying to figure out an order, because unfortunately, for whatever reason, I'm the kind of person that even if the games aren't related, if I haven't played the previous ones, I won't play the newest ones.
I think you run the risk of not really appreciating the previous ones if you play ahead, even if they're not...
kind of my mindset, even if that's not always the case. And it kind of puts me in a situation where, if people are going to listen to the podcast or go back to this episode and they go, these were the games that he was playing, doesn't he know that there was a new Zelda game that released this year? Why isn't he playing that?
Yeah.
And that's kind of my reasoning behind it. But I actually did download, I got a little emulator for my phone, and I've been playing through the original Legend of Zelda. And that's kind of my plan, because as far as today goes, the only Zelda games I've ever had the chance to play are Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, the physical copies I still own on my N64. But I was never one that had a handheld beyond the Game Boy Advance, so I missed out on a lot of those handheld titles. Never had a Wii, so I never got to play Twilight Princess. There's so many games that I've missed out on, and I'm finally starting to dig in and play through the series.
Yeah, it's a funny thing is that obviously Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask are so well thought of and considered just classic games, but it's I'm over here. I've been through Zelda 1, 2, and Link to the Past. Those are the three I've completed. I for the longest time I hadn't even played the N64 games. To me at that point I was kind of so all in on the Sony side of things that they just kind of passed me by.
I think I've only played 1 and 2. I think those. I don't even think I played. I remember you playing
Link to the Past was pretty awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, those are classic for sure. I do feel old that they're on a phone now, which is not surprising because you probably could fit the entire NES or SNES game collection on my phone and have plenty of room to spare, but
Just don't let Nintendo think you're doing that.
Mr. Nintendo, we are definitely not emulating games on my phone.
No, we are not. I actually bought the physical game for my phone.
Yes, you cram it in the back. Get that. I don't know if we sell that case on our store, but the one where you just cram the Nintendo game in the back of it. But if not, we probably should look into it. I think there's some money to be made there for sure. But yeah, we're gonna get to the con of the year. Chris, I don't know if you have anything else because I don't know. Did you even get to any gaming cons this year? But I didn't want to I don't want to drop you off the episode. But I know you got a lot of stuff going on. If you had anything else, we'll let you stick around. But otherwise, we'll cut you loose.
No, that pretty much covers it for me. It was nice getting to join you guys and talk video games. I mean, as far as our end of year topics, if there's one that's kind of my niche, I'd say it would definitely be this. But I'll definitely try to hop on for some of the year-end music, year-end wrestling. But yeah, as always, thanks for having me, and I'll stick around to listen to you guys talk about your conventions.
Sounds good. Thanks for joining us as always. We really appreciate it. And it's always good to talk to Chris, and obviously he's got a lot of stuff going on, new job, and obviously the kids and all that stuff. So we really appreciate him dropping in to talk a little bit about video games. Certainly, as I've mentioned many times before, Chris and Mike really are kind of our gaming experts on this podcast. So I always appreciate their perspectives on that. We're going to talk gaming conventions, and I know we have the same answer, so this will be really easy to talk about. We did go to, I think I went to 2 gaming conventions this year. Did you go to 3?
3 or 4.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I can't remember. Yeah, it's difficult.
But I know we have the same answer to this question, so that makes it pretty easy. Let's start with, you can go ahead and get the details out of the way. The gaming convention of the year, what do you got for us?
Yeah, it's funny. We talk about conventions so often, and as a result, you just feel like you kind of maybe overanalyze what they do and compare and contrast them with each other. And, the one I picked is very much now kind of a mature multi-day. It's now an adult. It's not one of these smaller cons, which are fine, but they know what they are. We know what they are. They're still building. This one feels like it's finally made the big time. And I'm talking about the Ohio Retro Gaming Convention, TORG. This year was the first year that they've run out of the Greater Columbus Convention Center and the Hyatt Regency, and it makes all the difference. It truly is, to me, it's you making it. It's the Ohio Expo Center is fine for what it is, but I think once you decide you want a multi-day event, there's just no better place.
There's not, and I only had a chance to come up the last day. You were there for the entire event, and first off, and I know we're going to try to have a moratorium on OhioCon talk this week.
Anyway,
OhioCon. Like, I just saw their nonsense Facebook post about talking about how Dayton is better and all this other stuff. And look, first off, I like Dayton. Dayton, we've had some good times in Dayton for sure. Izakaya's up there. We love those guys.
Yeah. They don't seem to be affiliated with OhioCon.
They are not, as it seems to be. But if you are trying to convince me that the Dayton Convention Center, that has no attaching hotel at the moment, that is considerably smaller, is in any way, shape, or form better than the Greater Columbus Convention Center, you must think I'm an idiot. Because if you've been to both, and admittedly, I've only seen pictures of the Dayton Convention Center, but I've seen a lot of reviews, so I feel like I have a good grasp of what it is. I'm sure it's very fine. They're doing wonderful renovations to it. For a convention center that size, that's good. Only problem for them is obviously they're also doing convention renovations to the Greater Cincinnati Convention Center. So, they're probably going to be not as nice as even that convention center. But the Greater Columbus Convention Center is state-of-the-art. It is massive. It is got multiple attached hotels, and on top of other hotels that are within convenient walking distance that are not attached, but you could easily stay at the Red Roof or at there's another one that's like just down the road. I can't remember what it is, but it's just right. It's over in the same neighborhood as Mikey's Late Night Slice, but. And the Dayton Convention Center, as Chris points out, does not have a giant head that has people's faces on it. So that is...
If that's not part of the renovations, what are we doing?
It should be right on top of the convention center. But and again, I don't want to get too much in the anime side because we will probably be talking OhioCon again next week, I'm guessing. But the bottom line is GCCC is top notch, first class all the way. If you have a convention and you have gotten to the point where you have outgrown a standard hotel and you're looking for convention center space and you are somewhere in the central Ohio, you're crazy if you go anywhere else because it is just the best place. And, the Torg, what they have done, and again, they didn't run a ton of space in there.
No.
But, having the big ballroom to be able to have a lot of the stuff laid out. I know you saw a wrestling show, which I'm sure you'll talk about, that was there the day before I got in. But there was plenty of room for everything. They also used some of the panel rooms. I just can't get over how much space there was in the vendor space. Like, you could basically have the time to look at every booth. And there was so much to look at that, you still got overwhelmed, but you didn't feel like you were crowded with all these people. Like, it was still very easy to get around. I think this is the first time I've actually been to Torg. I, was a big fan. I thought they absolutely knocked it out of the park and bought a couple of really cool things there. And I can't really say enough good things about it. I know you went previously when they were over at the Ohio State Fairgrounds and the Expo Center. And while that is not the worst venue in the world, there are definitely downsides to it. And it feels like all those downsides were kind of taken away by moving to the convention center.
Yeah, it kind of brings back the comparison between the Dayton Convention Center and the Greater Columbus Convention Center, because the Ohio Expo Center, there are no hotels attached to it. You're driving back and forth to an offsite hotel, and because of that, and really, like, the Expo Center feels much more conducive to like running a fair, or it feels like you're at a giant flea market essentially. Yes. Like, it just doesn't have that same kind of
it's a come and go place
business atmosphere as the convention center does.
Like, it's a place that you're like, I'm going to stop by there, I'm going to get what I need, I'm going to leave, and I'm not coming back. Yeah. It is not conducive for just being a hangout. It is like a mall. Like, you're going to go, you get the thing you need, and you leave, and that's, again, fine for a growing convention, but it's not ideal.
No, and you can't really put a price tag on the convenience of being in the vendor area. You pick up a few things, and you just think, I'm going to run back to the room for like an hour and just chill, and then come right back down here, and I'm in the thick of it again. Just that level of convenience, just your convention needs that. It really does. But kind of going back to what made Torg good beyond just the venue, they had additional content. The vendor area was huge. You had Extreme Fight World, which was running their cosplay wrestling show, which was a blast. Any kind of serious or casual competitive competitions you'd want to be in, they had that as well. And, there wasn't, I didn't feel or sense any negativity. And I feel like so many times now there's that kind of cloud over anime conventions in this area. And I feel like with Torg, I don't sense any of that. Also interesting too, if you go and you check out one of the content creators who was there, Metal Jesus Rocks, great channel on YouTube. Dude's really into collecting games, just really passionate about it. He has a video kind of going over his time at Torg, and even he, a guy who goes to big conventions all the time. They have the one up in Washington where he's from. That's a big deal, or Oregon, one of the two. But even he talks about just how impressive the whole thing was as far as the venue, the convention, and just. No one had anything negative to say about it.
And that just tells you exactly what the situation is. And again, I was impressed. I was only up there one day, but really had a good time. And if my schedule allows, I would love to go up for a full weekend next time. Didn't get the chance to do that this year, but any chance to go to the Greater Columbus Convention Center for almost anything, I'm going to have a good time. And the convention was top notch all the way. So easy pick for both of us for convention of the year, for gaming convention. Let's get to a little bit of anime talk at the end of this episode, as we are getting into a little bit of an extended episode, but it's great. It's the end of the year stuff, so it's going to be a little extended. Let's just talk briefly about Anime Holiday Guide. The big thing is, when you're looking to pick up some anime for the holidays, for Christmas, if you're doing your shopping, you want to make sure you're getting a good deal. And that's kind of why we wanted to talk about this briefly, is especially if you're buying a Sentai Filmworks show, you need to make sure you're going to Sentai Filmworks' website. In fact, that's the first place I would start. It's a shame in a lot of ways that Right Stuff is no more, because they used to run more than a month of Christmas sales. It doesn't even really look like Crunchyroll Store even has any Christmas sales currently going on. Maybe they're waiting to like hit you with one more big sale before Christmas, since we're getting to the middle of the month. But I just pulled a couple, and then I'll let you kind of chime in with your thoughts. A couple shows just as an example. Don Machi Season 1 on Blu-ray. Sentai Filmworks currently has it for $9.99, which is a tremendous deal. I mean, honestly, that's a crazy deal. Crunchyroll has it for $52.49.
Yeah.
So you can buy, almost 6 copies of it for what you're going to have to pay at Crunchyroll. K-On! Ultimate Collection, which I own. Sentai Filmworks, $30, and that's like 2 seasons of the anime and I think a movie. So that's a lot for $30. Amazon, $66.49. Walmart, $66.49. Wasn't even available as far as I could tell on Crunchyroll Store.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, if you're going to be shopping for especially Sentai Filmworks shows, you need to make sure you stop by their website first.
Yeah, I love picking things up on their website because they offer such ridiculous deals. Like I think I got, haven't you heard I'm Sakamoto? I think I got it for like $10 a year or two ago. Yeah, you mentioned Don Machi, and you can get season 1 there for $9.99, season 2 for $14, season 3 for $20, and even season 4 parts 1 and 2, which are the most recent to come out for physical release. I think they're each like $27. So even that for something that's pretty much brand new. I mean, we're into season 5 that's currently airing this season, but I mean, those are great deals. Another one of my top shows that I watched this past year, the show itself isn't from last year or this year, but an older show. It's probably about 15 years old or so. Kids on the Slope. You can get it on Blu-ray for $13.99. Another quality show if you like kind of bloodbath type anime, Akame ga Kill. You can get it for $17. Another one that stood out to me on Sentai Filmworks store is Razafon Complete Collection for $27.
Got that on my list. That was one of the ones that shows that I would recommend that we would see. You mentioned some. I'll throw a few more in there. I already mentioned K-On's collection. That's just a great deal. If you're a fan of Bocchi the Rock, if you're a newer anime fan, look for a show that really kind of influenced it. K-On's a good place to go. Clannad and Clannad After Story, probably the pinnacle of Key's storytelling in anime. You can get both on Blu-ray for $29.99. That's a series. If you're into that type of show, everybody should own that. Love Chinibyo and Other Delusions, the entire series for $29.99. That's a really good deal if you like romantic comedy, high school sort of thing. That's a good one. Your boy Kome, you get it for $23.99. That's a great show. Still relatively new, so it's a little more expensive than some of the other single season shows, but that's just so good. And you mentioned Razafon for $26.99. That show's really amazing, so definitely worth picking out if you get a chance. Shows that we'd like to pick up as kind of the last bullet point on this list. If there's maybe anything you haven't mentioned, anything else that you kind of saw that you'd like to pick up.
Nothing as of yet. Again, talking about Sentai's sale, just knowing the deals they have, that, being able to find something you want to buy would not be difficult whatsoever.
For sure.
It's just a matter of, do I want to drop $10 on something totally untested? Because that's
you could.
When prices are this reasonable, you almost are okay with taking a chance on something. I mean, maybe it's time to get into the Sayuki series. You can get Sayuki Gaiden Complete Collection and Sayuki Reload for $12 and $18 each. I just think when a store's willing to give you these kind of prices, like,
reward them.
Yeah, give them your business, because you're certainly bound to find something you enjoy within these listings.
I've got 3 picked out, but again, like you said, I mean, you could legitimately just jump into something random, and even if you didn't really care for it, you're out $10. Like, it's not even going to be that big a deal.
Yeah.
One thing I want to, if there's anybody from Sentai ever hears this, and I did tag them in the post for this podcast, so maybe one of their interns will come rolling in and listen to this at some point. and I don't know if they can even do this because a lot of times how shows are sold is determined by the rights holder and all that stuff. But if I had to make a recommendation, I remember Right Stuff used to basically create their own bundles where they would just bundle a whole show or bundle a whole manga series, and you could buy it that way as part of like their deal. It would be nice because I was looking through, like they had, I think you mentioned Sayuki, for example. Like it would be cool, or Don Machi's a better example.
A lot of
Don Machi. Bundle a bunch of that together into a release, and that makes, for someone like me who's maybe not started the show, I see the first 3 seasons of Don Machi for $30 or whatever, $40, and I'm like, okay, well that's easy. I can just order that and I can just jump right in and get them. Yes, I can add those all to the cart individually, but like, I'm dumb. Make it easy on me. Go ahead and put them all together if you can, if you're allowed to sell the show.
Well, I think that's just gonna make people more likely to pick them all up as opposed to just grabbing the first one.
Yeah, I think so. Like, make it convenient and one click and boom, you got it. 3 shows I saw on there that I thought would be, one for sure I will be picking up. The other 2 are kind of like, well, we see them all the time. Tamako Market, one of the early Kyoto Animation, not early, but earlier Kyoto Animation series. You can get that for $13.99. That's pretty highly regarded, so that would make a lot of sense. Yeah, Chris bringing up maybe one day we can have a promo code with Sentai Filmworks. That would be awesome.
That would be fantastic.
I'd love buying from those people. Beyond the Boundary is another one that we see a lot when we do a lot of these opening and ending theme videos. $15.99 for the series. Like, that's a great deal. And then one that's more expensive, but it is a new show, Oshinoko. You can get the Steelbook for that for $51.99. If you just want the season, it's $34.99, which is still really reasonable for a show with that much hype that's basically brand new. Obviously, season 2 just aired recently, but to get season 1 of that, that's a really good deal. So those are all ones, and 2 of those are shows that it's kind of like, for $40 would I buy it? Probably not, but for 13 and 15, would I grab it and see if it's any good? Yeah, I would probably do that.
Yeah, for sure. And this may not necessarily apply to the Sentai Filmworks stuff, but for some of these other sites, when you find good deals, jump on them, just because you never know when those rights are going to like shift somewhere else, and they'll end up on a different streaming service that maybe you don't want to pay for because you already have 8 streaming services. If there's something you think you're going to want to go back to more than once, it makes all the sense in the world to buy the physical.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm the wrong person to because I own so much physical media when it comes to the DVDs and Blu-rays, but I 100% agree. Like, you just don't know when you're not going to be able to find something anymore, or you don't know when something's going to be really valuable down the road because it goes out of print and disappears, and then people are looking for the physical copy of it. And so I 100% agree. And that's the other thing too, before we kind of wrap this up, is definitely check DVD and Blu-ray vendors at conventions, especially if a group like Discotech comes in and sets up a table, because a lot of time, back in the day when Right Stuff was a thing, a lot of times I could find something cheaper on Right Stuff than I could find it at a convention. So I'd be like, do I really want to, like, if it was close, like, I would go ahead and buy it because then I'm supporting the vendor and I have it in my hand right now. Now it's not unusual to see it cheaper, especially if it's not a Sentai Filmworks show, if it's a show that's on the Crunchyroll store or elsewhere. It's not unusual to see it cheaper in person at a convention. So make sure, always price check, as you do with everything, but you might actually find you might get a better deal at a convention, which is kind of wild that's the case, but for whatever reason, that seems to be the way it works out now.
Yeah, and when you talk about kind of random scarcity that drives up the value of something, I think being a game collector, you see that all the time, where some of the most expensive games out there, you probably wouldn't even be interested in playing to begin with. Like, it's nothing about the quality of the game. It's just maybe it didn't sell very well, had a limited run, and next thing you know, Little Samson for NES is $2,400 loose. I don't need to own that game. I certainly don't need to own it for $2,400, but I mean, that's just one of many games like that. Like, you just never know.
I just love that you shared that photo of that in our chat, and like, oh, I thought that said $2,400. Oh yeah, it does. It did say $2,400. That was, they're not missing a decimal point out of there. Like, it is legitimately $2,400. But if you get a chance, if you love a series, Plus, you buy the physical media, you know you're directly supporting the dub that's on it. If there's not a dub on it, you're supporting the creators in Japan. Like, streaming services and anime are just like streaming services and music. The amount of money that they're getting back at the creator, a lot less than if you get the physical copy of it. So definitely physical releases, always for the win, whether we're talking music or anime. That's going to wrap up what was a big episode as we get to the first part of our best of 2024. Really good stuff this week from Mike and Chris, especially. We talk about some of the best games of 2024. Hopefully you found something there that you want to check out. If you have a game that you played in 2024 that we need to know about, let us know in the comments on YouTube or send us a message on social media. We'd love to hear about it and talk about it on a future episode of the Nerdcast Empire. Speaking of future episodes, we'll be back on Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern. It is another episode of Music Weekly. It's the music of November the 29th. Looking forward to digging into that over the next couple of days and getting ready for that podcast on Sunday. Next Thursday, Best of Wrestling 2024. We'll also do some anime headlines at the beginning like we did this week, but it's been a wild year in professional wrestling, especially WWE and NXT. We'll be digging into that coming up next Thursday night, 7 o'clock Eastern on the Nerdcast Empire. Big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support of our podcast. Big thanks to everyone who's out there sharing our posts, jumping in, listening to our podcast. We appreciate it. Big thanks to Chris and Mike as well for joining me this week, and a big thanks to you, the listener, for being with us. That's going to wrap things up for the entire crew. I'm Matt saying so long. Don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.